Welcome to another episode of Building Brand Gravity. I'm Kyle Turner, Digital Growth and Analytics Director here at GNS Business Communications. And I'm very, very excited to warmly welcome the Marketing Insights and Innovation Manager for Syngenta US, Rosalyn Moore. You spent about 20 years at Syngenta,
I
Rosalyn, is that
know.
right?
I must have started when I was a baby.
Well, Rosalind, you and I have had conversations. We've partnered a few times in the past. You've obviously partnered with the agency here at GNS for a while. I wanted to talk to you though about some things that have been top of mind for me over the last several months, really, um, and really the concept of digital as uh, a space, as a marketing tool. I've been thinking myself about what digital marketing means and kind of what digital is. Like, does it even make sense to refer to it as like a separate practice? Um, you've been working in digital now, especially at Syngenta, for pretty much your entire time there. And I think that what has been of interest to me is specifically what digital transformation, what digital marketing might mean for an agriculture company,
Hmm.
one that is probably viewed as fairly austere. Obviously, agriculture runs through the fabric of everything that kind of happens in this country. We have a pretty big agriculture industry here, but digital marketing is still fairly new, I think, for the entire space. And not only do I kind of want to get your insight about that, but kind of get your insight about like kind of growing up in this industry. You
Hmm.
started, for those who don't know, Rod's story, you started as a electrical engineer, which is nuts to me. And then
Easy, right? Right?
right, and then like kind of found yourself in digital marketing. So I think first things first, before we kind of get into the meat of this conversation, I wanted to give you a chance to kind of introduce yourself to our audience and kind of let them know how your story started and how you found yourself where you are now.
Yes. So again, like you said, my name is Rosalyn Moore, and I like where you started it, Kyle. You took it back to my undergrad.
Hmm.
Electrical engineering is where I got my start, and it's the funny story because actually, it's the same time I was introduced to the ag space, and that's
Hmm.
because my now husband, then high school sweetheart, actually was going to college. His major was agricultural business. And I got to tell you, as soon as he told me that was his major, I don't know if people remember or old shows like Little House on the Prairie,
Of
but it
course.
was one of these shows where you saw farmers struggling to just make it and all the uncertainties in their world. And I'm like, the likelihood that we are getting married has just decreased when I heard what he was trying to do. And so it's funny, fast forward, yes, I started off in electrical engineering, but he was already working for one of Syngenta's legacy companies. And when the mergers happened, we had found ourselves in Greensboro, North Carolina. And I went back to school for a marketing degree, fast forward some more. And I didn't necessarily choose the ag industry. I chose
Hmm.
Syngenta. I chose Syngenta as an awesome
Interesting.
company. I knew a lot about the company. Obviously, my husband was working there as well. I came in through procurement, ended up getting into market research, which is where I really fell in love with not just the industry, but the people in the industry. And I got the understanding that exactly what you said earlier, is digital even the right term to use? I would sit in meetings, and every time you hear something like, at that time, we would say internet marketing, or, it wasn't
Oh
so
yeah, I
much.
remember the crazy
I think
ways
I
we
had
were
a
referring to it
title.
back then.
Yeah, internet marketing manager. But when you hear digital and I'm sitting in a meeting, it's like I always pop up, like, okay, it's my turn to talk.
Sure.
And it's not at all. When you're talking about the ag industry, it's almost this misnomer that the industry is so behind, right? There's no technological advances, and that couldn't be further from the truth. From a
Hmm.
marketing perspective, you might see some differences based on the target audience you're trying to reach. But when you
Sure.
look at the level of technology and innovation that has happened in this space, it's actually quite amazing. And so, where I had this thought of, Little House on the Prairie and someone out there, with the animal pulling pulling something behind to really get out there and clean the fields. That's not where we are anymore.
Right.
And so as you've watched the advancement and all that technological advancement around, it's offered more opportunity for us from a marketing perspective, your digital marketers, to get in front of the growers, to get in front of the farmers. So depending on who you're targeting in the ag industry, if you're going from business to business and that other business is the grower, the farmer, their lives have changed tremendously
For sure.
because of all the technology and the advancement in this space. And so they're sitting in equipment now that they might have more screens than you have, in your car.
Mm.
So if you can relate it to something like the cars that we have today, thinking about people in different industries, everybody can relate to having a car. And you look at years ago in the car, you might have had the radio and even push buttons to
I
make it
know.
go to different stations.
Push
You look
buttons, huh?
now, yeah, yeah, that probably predates you. It predates you. But you look now, and that was for the radio, not to start the car, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you look now, and I mean, you've got backup cameras, you've got
Yeah.
cameras in the front, you've got things that can protect you from going into one lane or the other lane. This same type of advancement's been happening in the ag industry. And so now, when they're out in the field and they're in their equipment, before that meant you can't talk to them. In my market research days, it's like, oh well, it's harvest time. We're not going to be able to have any interviews. Well, now it's like, oh no, it's another screen. The mobile
Yeah.
phones created so much opportunity for us to still then be able to reach them. So again, when you talk about digital marketing and digital, you have to be very specific about what we're talking about when you are in the ag industry. And so, yes, typically you wouldn't be doing, I mean, I look at my kids, I've got teenagers, and, every new channel that comes out, when Snapchat came out, it was like, oh, you on Snap, are you on Thread now? Twitter's the new Twitter, they're adopting all those different things at a different rate, right? But
For
if
sure.
who I'm trying to reach isn't there,
Doesn't
then
matter.
I don't need to be there either, right? Like
Yeah.
this
A
isn't
thousand
what
percent.
I'm doing. So to your point, I mean, as I've moved through and grew up in this industry, not only have I learned a lot about what's happening around it, but I almost feel like it's my duty to ensure that those of us who have not grown up on a farm, do not understand all the industry, get a little bit of a peek to this is an amazing, innovative space. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like I said, I didn't choose it, but I've chosen to stay in the industry mainly because I'm excited about the challenge. I mean, we're trying to feed 8 billion people, right? Like, that's a huge number, a huge challenge, and everybody can relate to you have to eat. So, how do we do that knowing that you're going to have less land? How do you do
Mm-hmm.
that with less people even staying in the field, So, that challenge has been what I think excites me and keeps me in the industry. But by no means did I say, agriculture. That's the spot for me.
That's where.
It wasn't that.
So you mentioned something actually kind of interesting that I wanted to hook on. Two things really. You noted that people kind of assume certain things about this audience, farmers, growers, retailers, even about how digitally savvy they may be. And you mentioned that that's kind of a little bit of a misnomer. You've kind of highlighted a few examples of where uh, growers, farmers in general, are way more connected than they've ever been before. I guess taking that into context, like how would you actually describe both the digital transformation stage that agriculture as an industry is in, while also describing the specific stage that digital marketing for agriculture might be in from
Yeah.
your perspective?
Yeah, so it's different. I would say the marketing trails the rest of the advancement, right? I feel like everything else around the digital transformation in the industry is what's enabling um,
Mm.
digital marketers to be able to do more. And so
So
again,
like the marketing's not like they're not driving the change, but rather the change within the industry is driving the marketing almost.
I think that's helped. Obviously, things like the pandemic has helped. I
Hmm.
mean, you think about it, and again, it's always going to depend where you sit in the industry. So somebody else could come on, same industry, and speak a little bit differently about it based on who your true consumer is. And so for us, if you're talking about the grower, or for us, Syngenta, everybody knows probably that we really work through and with our channel in service of the growers. So we are marketing a lot to our retailers and empowering them. And so retailers were a little bit different. You've got people that might be then sitting behind the desk a little bit and you could get to them versus when you think about somebody out on the farm, what do you think? You're in a rural area. What does that mean? Sometimes your internet connectivity
Yeah.
isn't going to be there. Sometimes, and again, this is where phones have helped, but there have been areas that I've gone in that your phone don't really work, right? And so that starts to limit what a digital marketer can do to reach that grower. But at the same time, these are people that all their time isn't in that one space where you don't have connectivity, and connectivity has gotten so much better over the
Sure.
years that, I mean, as these things are happening and as you've got the different technological advances around them, that's freed up more time, right, for them to experience other things. So if I take something like, this is not controversial, but social media, this was always one of the big things that early on we were pushing to, we gotta have our presence on social media. But then the question was, is our audience on social media? Well, they weren't
Yes.
initially on social media, just like I'm sure if I asked you, were your parents on social media when you first got on social media? They weren't.
Nope.
You got to look at the age gap, right? The average age right now, I think, is like 67 or something, so in that range. Um, and so you look at what any other 67-year-old, which by the way, that is not old, seasoned, not old, but
I like the way you put that.
67,
Seasoned. Yes.
yeah, seasoned, not old. But you look at what anybody in that age demographic. What are they doing? Well, that's not you're not marketing to them the same way you're marketing to your 20-year-old right out of college, right? They're
Right.
showing up in different places and spaces, and so again, being able to understand who your audience is and market appropriately. I would then go back to the question you asked. Again, I'm looking at what's happening around them that's freeing them up to be in some different spaces where today I need to be there because they're there, but other channels from a digital marketing perspective, I might need to get my toes wet in it because they might be there tomorrow. The reason that they are there may not be that they're wanting to be marketed to. It might be, yes,
Sure.
they've now jumped on, everybody's, using YouTube because I want to see, these different videos, how to do things that are needed for my business. On Facebook, they may be there, but it had nothing to do with business. It had everything to do with family, right? Where a lot of us had initially gone there. And so as marketers, you're savvy enough to know, there they are, they're coming. Let me see if I can hit them with a little bit of information, and how do they receive that? And did they like to receive that in that forum, or was that a miss? And sometimes it was too soon. Like this isn't, there's another a medium that's going to allow us to be more effective. So that doesn't mean that, oh, then, we're so far behind. It just means that this is the medium that works. And so instead of being creative and going to a bunch of different digital marketing channels, you might need to be creative and ensure that that same email that you're doing is now cutting through the clutter of everybody else because we've made it that innovative, that, in your face, engaging, that somebody wants to spend what time they do have in front of the screen looking at your information. So again, I still think that what's happening around has helped influence how fast digital marketing
Mm,
can grow. And I would say that in the last few years, I think it's grown probably exponentially, right? The things that you can do, to the point where I um, I work with some other people that touch the industry in other industries, and I hear them saying, I market a lot the same way from a paid media perspective, from a,
mm-hmm,
little bit different organic, right? But it's using a lot of the same principles and approach that they do in other industries, because at the end of the day, it's all people. It's all people.
for sure. I've always been interested in the challenges that you're talking about because I feel like agriculture as a market is a really paradigmatic microcosm for what B2B marketing is like in general, especially in the digital space. It's a way more discerning, often a lot smaller group of people that you have to show and prove um,
Mhm.
usefulness, effectiveness to. So when I'm thinking of what digital marketing even looks like for the agriculture sector, I'm thinking of ways that we can effectively change the information or how we distribute the information to people and kind of what we show people. I
Mhm.
think for me, I've often been curious, having kind of worked with you on some digital marketing strategies before, and I know the agency has worked with Syngenta more broadly on some digital marketing strategies in the past as well, and currently. Um, when you're looking at that partnership between your agency and kind of the marketplace you're serving to talk to, where do you find like the biggest obstacles when it comes to implementing some of the more innovative techniques in digital marketing, where you maybe have an opportunity to try something but are not 100% certain about what the effectiveness would look like? Like, how are you tracking that? How are you
Yeah.
articulating that value? How are you showing that value?
Yeah, that's it's tough, right? Ag industry, like many others, is very much a relationship industry, and like I like to tell people when I'm out in with our commercial units and talking to our reps, those that are directly face to face interfacing with, be it our retailers or our farmers, when they're doing that, I cannot say that any of those touch points, right, that we provided was the one that changed that person's mind and said, "Yes, I want the sale." But I can say that based on years of research, we know that it takes several touch points to get someone aligned with your company. And I know that as a rep, when you've got all these people that you've got to get out and talk to, you may not possibly be able to get to that person 7 times, 8 times. So, how can we do that if it's
Yeah,
going to take that many times of talking to that person to get them aligned to your company, to your product? Well, that's where marketing can help. And so, I want to make sure that somebody has heard about our new products before our rep has ever even gone there to talk to that person. You want, and be that through your retailer, so you've educated them, or be that directly to the grower because you've shown up in different spaces where they weren't even expecting you to show up on the TV station that they're watching. All of a sudden, here you break in, it's talking about Syngenta. Whatever that is, we're raising that awareness, right? And so when you think about how do we get there, and it's easier to prove we raise that awareness when you then hear the reps saying, "Yeah, I talked to them and they had already seen a commercial, or they heard something on the radio, or whatever that is." Where, to your point, when you're working with the agency, a lot of times you want to move past your billboards, right? But billboards are still effective. You want to move past your direct mail, but direct mail is still effective. You want to move past some of these things that were more traditional, But when we find some of it still effective, we don't want to move too quick, right? You want to
Sure.
still be doing what's effective, but then try new things. And so when the agency relationship is working just right, you get just enough push to try and do these other things that allow us to differentiate ourselves in the industry. And when you're asking to try, you pilot. You don't risk everything
Sure.
on this new technique that I can't tell you is really going to work or not. I give you some proof points. We get out there and we test it out in some areas. The thing I love about digital marketing is you can measure it, right? And I can look to see, did we get engagement? Did people open the email? Did people click on the link? Did they spend some time looking at the information? You can see that stuff. And so the more that we can prove that out, it helps you build your business case to go to the next thing. But to your point, where you see some of the challenges, sometimes we want to get there too fast. And
Sure.
sometimes you have people that we can get so excited about that shiny new technique, that shiny new tactic, that, oh my God, this is so cool. We can get lost in the cool factor and forget what's the objective. Who are we really trying to reach? And so finding that balance is sometimes hard, but if you didn't experience some of that tension, I'd say we weren't doing it right, or the
Sure.
relationship, even with the agency, wouldn't be right.
I couldn't agree more. I think one of the most valuable things that an agency can do for its client base is to have an unflinching honesty, especially in an area that requires so much experimentation.
Yes.
The simple fact is that we have probably more access than we've ever had before, on ways to effectively show the value of any program we do. I think, to your point, so you mentioned certain traditional advertising and marketing tactics continuing to work in a field like agriculture for some very good reasons. I think some very obvious reasons, honestly. I think I've always thought, though, that in areas like this, maybe some of the more niche areas that a lot of B2B clients tend to service, where you can find a lot of um, stronger relationships with digital teams, digital agencies, what have you, is in the measurement of some of these tactics, like seeing where any upticks in search volume, any upticks in conversation volume, any upticks in website traffic, website engagement, etc., are whether or not those are being connected to
Mm-hmm.
some of those
Mm-hmm.
tactics. So to that end, Raza, I'll posit to you, where are you seeing the best opportunity and maybe even the best tool set that exists
Mm-hmm.
for like digital innovations that could significantly impact the way that digital marketing is done in a field like agriculture or other fields that might be a little bit more um, slow to adopt, let's say.
Yeah, okay. So not necessarily any one tool, but I'm just going to tell you the whole artificial intelligence space
I love
is
it.
real.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, you look at what's capable,
Uh-huh.
and I mean, you start with something like Chat GPT, right? And looking at, wait a minute, I can create content. I
Mhm.
can I can now create images. I can speak to something and create the image that I needed to put in an ad. I can, I can
Look how
bring
excited you're
data
getting.
together. Oh my gosh. When I tell you, it has been, and for me, Kyle, I have to see it, right? When I first started getting invited to some of the different, your conferences or your meetings or companies wanting to come in talking about what they can do, I've seen on a lot of our tools that we have, be it data and analytics, or even, we are marketing cloud users. You look at the marketing, Einstein, Salesforce brought up, and it's like, okay, first go round at some of that, and I'm like, not as insightful as I was looking for. Like, matter of fact, this
Indeed.
wasn't helpful at all, right? But now you start to see it's coming together. And
Yeah.
so, early on, what was a little bit of a turn off is now quite the opposite, because things that I've spent lots of time trying to get data out of tools to be able to analyze and just answer questions like, what is the best time to be sending emails to
Yeah.
our to our audience? When are people really engaging? Are we sending them too much, not enough? Things that we had to do to try to answer that question before, seriously, just as you're getting the answer, boom, now all of a sudden, Einstein does work. This
Yep.
is telling me this information. And so when you look at what artificial intelligence can do in all the spaces, and go back to what we first talked about, how we're able to advance digital marketing so much more because of all the other advancement. Well, as artificial intelligence starts to have a play in all these different spaces, not just because I work in data as well, but I say so much starts and ends with our data. And so you imagine now that instead of us having to spend so much time getting all the data in one place, right? Trying to spend so much time solving problems that soon will be yesterday's problems. We can now do this with a click of a button. Yeah, it's still going to take some time to get us there, but the amount of insights we can get and then be able to act on that, I mean, sky is the limit. You want to talk about personalization, and wanting to make sure that if I'm trying to get to Kyle, I not only know how to reach Kyle, I know what Kyle prefers. I'm going to show up in a way that Kyle's like, oh, Roz really knows me. I mean, to do that, it's almost the cliche, right? We want to show up at the right time, right place with the right content, all those things. Yeah, we want to try that, but you start looking and this stuff's achievable, and so it does excite me. I'm excited about it, and I feel like that's going to be the thing. Everybody's going to have to hone in on it in their particular area. But as we do, I think we're going to be able to do some things we've never done before, except data privacy will be the biggest hurdle. And so, just as we're getting to that point, you now then have to balance that, rightfully so, with respecting people's boundaries. But and maybe it's just because I'm a marketer, I enjoy whether it's mail that I see on my kitchen table or it's an email in my inbox, when I see that somebody has really sent something relevant to me that I actually need and
Yep.
was just searching for, and now you've delivered the answer to me, and now you've also told me where to go to find out more, and helped navigate me along the path to get the item, the service I want, the product I want, whatever that is. That's a good thing to me.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want you spying, don't want you knowing everything about my life, but where you can help facilitate that in a very respectful way, I just think the artificial intelligence space is going to change so much in every aspect. It's not just digital marketing. It's definitely not just the ag industry. This is going
Oh,
to be
for sure.
everywhere.
I think for sure, there's a lot that is possible when you leverage artificial intelligence, and it's been a talking point for a lot of the episodes we've done of this podcast, and probably several, and certainly several others. It's been a topic of conversation in boardrooms and lunchrooms, and dining rooms. For me, and I think for the agency at large, we're looking at artificial intelligence in a very meticulous and intentional and deliberate, I think, way.
Hmm.
You mentioned something that I really could not help but applaud in my head. And you said that data, like everything that we do as far as innovations, as far as advancements, probably begins and ends with data. I 100% agree that it is really, to me, data AI is probably going to represent the biggest jump in accessibility and effectiveness for not just marketing, but probably for the outcomes that farmers, that growers, retailers, etc., are looking for. Um, you know, I love some of the work that our analysts are doing in this space, and I know that Syngenta employs a host of analysts, analytics experts in there. Is there anything that is kind of sparking your interest from a Syngenta perspective, internally? Anything that your competitive set or kind of the other brands that you're noticing are doing within the digital space or within the AI space that is starting to pique your interest at this point?
I can say, from an interest peaking, starting with, like you said, the data, the way we're able to garner some insights right now is interesting. Interesting to me because I know the ways with which we've had to get there to get it, and are still working to get some of it, is tough, right? And so we're still very much piloting a lot, and checking to see, is that right?
Mm,
And so when you ask, which really piques my interest, because I was so focused on the data side, I think I was missing everything else. And when I
mm,
say everything else, I say I was not prepared for ChatGPT. I was not prepared, for being able to speak and have pictures,
okay.
images. I wasn't.
When you say
I couldn't
prepared,
apply.
what do you mean by that? Like, talk about that.
Well, no, I didn't see it. I did not. That wasn't a vision. So the
Mm,
people that have been working in these spaces for a while, and you probably could say, I bet that's where this is going. I bet we'll be able to do more over here. I bet we. I did not see
mm,
that. That wasn't where I thought the next move was. And so why you see me get so excited is because I start wondering, now, and where else is it? And where else is it? And how else is this going to real life application help me now?
floodgates
And
have opened. Yes.
yeah. And so, I mean, I think everybody goes to the big bang. What's going to be the big thing that happens? I'm now looking at even some of the smaller things. How does how we interact with the Microsoft products now change? How has my kid, writing essays now change? How are governmental policies going to have to change, or in rules in school, because you now have this? It's so much that we can do so much faster. It's like this next revolution. It's I feel like we're living through something now that you'll look back and be like, wow, that
Yeah.
we are not just taking a step, right? We're about to leap. And so that I don't know if it's any one thing that gets me excited. It's all the little things. And to your point earlier of how do you get people internally? How do you prove, uh, when you don't have hard measurements? Sometimes, how do you prove that we should be working in this space? How do you prove it? You show some of the success that's already happened. Some of the things that, just like I didn't see it, there are others that sit around the table with me that didn't see some of this, that are wowed by some of this. And so when you can say, this just happened, then you can start saying, okay, well, yeah, we do need to jump on that, because stuff is happening at a much, and adoption is happening at a much faster rate than it has in years past. And so you can make those parallels, right? And get people to at least say, yeah, let's give a try to some of that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get our toes wet in some of that. And so it's an exciting time to be
Agree.
a digital marketer, to be, I mean, it's the things that are happening now. If you would have had this interview, I don't know, some 6 7 years ago, even, it's a little bit different. You talk about challenge,
Just a
it's a
little.
different conversation.
Yeah. Actually, that kind of brings me to another quick question that I had. Like, are you noticing kind of a sea change as far as digital adoption within Syngenta? Do you feel like it's happening at a different clip than it was before?
I do. I do. I feel like, people are trying more. I feel like, I mean, I see all around. I love when I look at even internal emails that have videos showing all, I mean, when I see things that we do externally to get attention from our customers happening internally to internal stakeholders, that excites me. That's like now these things are table stakes, right? So much so that even to your neighbor down the hall, you're sending these advanced emails to cut through the
Hmm.
clutter. You're doing things. So I do. I just don't think it's I don't think we're the only ones. I'm not naive enough to think that, ooh, we got it, nobody else did, right? I think you could probably ask this question of many people
Sure.
in their offices outside of a technology company and hear some of the same things.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I want to circle back real quick because when we started the conversation, and I kind of ticked this in my head because I wanted to come back to it.
Uh-uh.
You said that you didn't choose like agriculture; you chose Syngenta specifically.
Hmm.
What about Syngenta, especially in this space, especially coming from the field you were coming from? Like, what attracted you there, and kind of how have you seen your own career growth like ascend and blossom since you've been at Syngenta?
So it's really interesting because I started my career in Syngenta in procurement.
Mm,
And what I saw with Syngenta is they were willing to try some stuff. And so when I came into procurement, I was on the indirect side, goods and services side. And I was brought in, I was hired, that was what I was going to do. But immediately when I came in, my job role shifted a little because we were ready to launch an e-procurement system. And that's when I realized I was working for a global company, right? Like, yeah,
hmm.
I didn't quite get that before. And
Yeah, then you
so
realize
when
just how
you
big you are. Yep.
it's big, right? And so, you think about it, and they told me, oh, it'd be like 20% of your time. Not a big deal. And it became a big deal, but it was just as big of a deal for me very quickly in my career. Um, Someone in my role, I think it was like a purchasing associate or analyst, it might have been what the role was. But all of a sudden, the stakeholders, because of the tool that I now was managing, I've got approvers that go all the way up to the CEO. I got, I've got requesters that hit every area of the business. All of our, even in our plants, I'd get calls because the stuff wasn't working, right? So I'd get
Yep.
calls from, people at our plants that say, I got a service person outside the door and they're not able to come in because your tool hasn't spit out a purchase order. So the thing that was great for me, I've never left my technology background. Electrical engineering is where I started, but I've been able to take the technology side of me that I love and use that to solve problems. So in procurement, I very much
Interesting.
instantly went into technology, right? I'm working on this tool, I'm trying to solve problems. But then the other part of me, which I didn't get to do in college, I had told my mom, second year, sophomore year, says, I know I've said since I was in seventh grade, I was going to be an electrical engineer. Sorry, Mom, I was tripping. I shouldn't have said that. I know that every summer camp you've put me in all those years was so that I could do well as an electrical engineer.
It's
But
not
I'm
happening.
sorry, Mom. This isn't it. This is, I realized I did it because somebody said I couldn't, and I wanted to show them that I could. And
Interesting.
she says, you're going to finish this, but I wanted to switch to psychology. I really loved getting to know people, getting to understand what makes you tick, how to help people develop, how to help people understand themselves better. But I couldn't pursue that. So, next best thing, you have me at Syngenta. I've got that technology side of me going. I was introduced to global procurement. Syngenta sent me, some of my first global trips came because of work. All of a sudden, we're based in Basel, Switzerland. So it's like I'm in Switzerland. And it was nothing for me to go to Switzerland. It's like, wow, this is amazing. So what opened up to me, because Syngenta is a global company and they develop their people, and are willing to take chances. I went from procurement. They then had me as like the first person doing both indirect and direct procurement. So I got to understand our raw materials side of the business, understand how everything comes together to make our products. But then they took a shot on me in market research. I didn't know market research, but it's
Hmm.
where I wanted to go. And that's
Wow.
the way that I was able to really tap into this other side, the psychology side of me, right? And so again, when you look at how my career, yeah, I had my MBA, but I didn't have a lot of marketing experience. And so the fact that I was able to navigate my way through, now I will not say that it wasn't without difficulty, right? You had challenges, but you had a lot of people along the way that were helping to get you there, that said,
Hmm.
yeah, I think you could do this. I think we should try this. And I did. And off I went. And so it's continued to kind of be like that for me. And then once I hit market research, it became market research, internet marketing, back to some type of market research, back to digital marketing, and then marketing technology, CRM. I got to kind of stay all in that space that allows me to both use my that psychology side of me that I love and the technology side of me that I love. And so Syngenta is a company that's willing to invest in their people. And
Hmm.
I think some people take that for granted. But now when I take a look back, I can even see within Syngenta the things that I can tout and say, this is great. Some of it didn't happen day one, but now I can look at all the policy changes, all the different things that have happened that, I mean, people now coming out of school to Syngenta, it's a different experience than what I had. That's like, I'm looking at that like, wow, yeah,
Right.
we've got some great things to offer, great vacation packages, great. I mean, just we've come a long way. And I feel like, again, Syngenta, it was the right company. And I mean, well, obviously I've been there for
Yeah, you've
years,
been there for 2 decades. I
but
would hope so.
yeah, but it's not because I have to, right?
Mm.
And so when I say I didn't choose ag, I didn't. I chose Syngenta, and once I got there, it really wasn't even until I think you guys might have had me do. It's like an ag career. I was talking about my career on some video. Um, for something we were doing, and I was being asked, you didn't come from a farm, and
Yeah.
what's your belief, what's your passion. And I mean, I'm thinking, oh my God, I might have almost been in tears trying to explain to this guy, like, do you realize there are people today in the city you're in that don't eat? Like, that's a big
Mm.
deal. And we're trying to ensure that we can help feed people in the future, that we can feed the growing population, but not just them. We try to give back in our community to the people today that don't eat. And so
Yes.
just that type of impact is major for me. You can't
Sure.
go in any industry and have solved those types of problems that have that widespread impact. And so
Yeah.
when you say, no, I didn't grow up on a farm, and I do still laugh at when I think back to the Little House on the Prairie. I understand the challenges better. I understand the rewards better. I understand the pride better when you have, and that's your legacy. I understand that, but different people in this industry all can come together on that same thing to know we got to eat.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
someone has to be here to ensure that for the land you got left, we're making the most out of that. We're ensuring that the crops have the most yield that they can, or that doesn't happen, right? So it's to me, it's an awesome industry to be in, and I love seeing how it's expanding in other areas. I mean, our digital ag team, when you see all the things that are happening with the drones, and there's so many more people now that have a place in this industry that
Mm.
yesterday did not. And so that's where, again, when we say things like, we technologically may be behind, or so. It's like, no, 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 that don't apply.
Yeah.
That's not the case. You've got so much more now in this industry, and I think you'll just continue to see that grow because this problem's not going to go away.
Right. Two things you just kind of alluded to. One explicitly, one tacitly. Everything you're saying tacitly speaks to purpose. Roz, because
Mhm.
it sounds like you sound like a person that has found a great and noble purpose in what it is you're doing with Syngenta. Even as, listen, no company is perfect. Every company has its own fair share of challenges and hurdles it has to navigate. But I think you finding the purpose in what you're doing there at Syngenta, I think is not only noble, but I think it's something that most people would envy, honestly. Um, and I think more broadly speaking, more explicitly, you mentioned legacy. When I first started in this industry, I mean, and even to a certain extent now, you can count on one hand the amount of people, like brown people, that were kind of working in the same rooms
Mhm.
as me. You noted that there is more of a place for all
Mhm.
different types of people, more so than there has been before. Um, Talk to me a little bit about your experience as working in not just ag but in digital marketing on the whole, and whether or not you've seen kind of more people who look like you, Roz, like you're a black woman who have kind of made their way, made their bones, made their started to carve out a legacy for themselves in both agriculture and in digital marketing.
Yep, I will preface it by saying major growth but not enough, right? You
Sure.
want to see more, but I can tell you, even for me, when I was in market research, I'm going to different areas that I've never been before. And
Okay.
I could get to the areas, and I can look around, and it's not just not seeing any African Americans. It may not be any women. It wasn't, it's some of the
Mm,
different rooms. It's like, oh, well, where are we? And then when you tell me my phone's
mm.
not going to work either, like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
this is, and so, you know, and so it's still very different, depending on the space that you're in. I mean, you look at growers. If you think about African American grower, that's like less than 2%
Sure.
of growers. I mean, very small. So from a customer perspective, right, you don't have many that look like you. But then from an industry perspective, I think that diversity is coming, especially with the diversity of different areas, different types of technology that are coming into the space. That's bringing that as well. But I can say when I started, even in Syngenta, I was always happy to see you. Like, okay, oh, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I can say that now it's been funny because if you would have asked me before, I could tell you everybody at
Yeah.
our company
Hmm.
that looked like me. I could tell you the names. I could tell you. And now I'm sometimes walking. I'm on the phone. I'm getting into the office, and it's like, what? Who are
Okay.
you? And who are you? Wait
Yeah,
a
I know that
minute.
game.
Where'd you come from? And it's still awesome. It's awesome to see the growth in diversity. I do still think more is needed, but I feel good about a lot of the different minority programs and things like associations like Manners, um, that are there to not just help once you've reached the industry, but starting with the students, even in high school and college, and helping to attract more to the ag industry. There are people that don't know what that is because they did not grow up on a farm, but there's so much opportunity here. So I like what a lot of the different associations are doing, and I like what a lot of the companies are doing, these employee resource groups, uh, where we have an African American leadership group at Syngenta. When I went to college, we had a Center for Black Culture. Those areas are needed to help ensure that once you bring somebody into these spaces where, yeah, they don't see many people that look like them, you've got some support to help
Hmm.
them be
Not
able
feel
to
so
navigate.
alone. Yeah.
right, and know you're not alone. And so I think our industry is getting it right, much like others. And I just hope to continue to see that trend that way, and that you don't just see it, that you start seeing it at all levels, more diversity.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm gonna leave you with this final question, and it's kind of
Oh,
a coalescence of everything we spoke about. As we noted at the top, w- agriculture and digital marketing in this space, they're both two areas that have seen massive growth. One is influencing the other, but obviously there's still a lot of room, a ceiling that
absolutely.
is yet to be hit. Right
Hmm. Hmm.
now, you coming into this space and kind of navigating it the way that you did, like what advice would you have for any marketing professionals, especially in the digital sector, that are looking to apply those skills in an industry that may not be traditionally associated with digital marketing or digital transformation?
Hmm.
And what key lessons do you think you've taken from the way that you've been able to navigate your own journey there through there?
So, from a marketing perspective, I'll start there and then I'll do personal. But from a marketing perspective, know your audience.
Mm,
Know your audience. You come in, I don't care how great your skills are, how much you've done in other industries, what you think you know, if you can't apply it to the audience because you don't know them, if you can't relate and speak the language because you haven't learned it, then it's going to be difficult for you. So,
preach.
as you go into any other industry, you need to know who is it that you're going to be marketing to. And then from a more personal and still professional side, who are those people that you've got to convince? You need to know your internal stakeholders just as much. What do they value? What are they looking for? So you're always able to relate back where I'm trying to go and what I'm trying to push to what's going to work for them.
Mm,
Third, I'd say don't be naive enough to think you can go this alone. I can remember literally, I'll say a young lady came to me and said, "Hey, this is early on in my career, still in procurement. We're looking to form a mentorship group for African American women, And I was like, okay, yeah, good luck with that. Like, I don't need that. I'm good. Like, and it is actually two women, and I looked at both of their careers, and I instantly looked to say, well, I don't want to be you, and I don't want to be you, but it was very short sighted, and thankfully they didn't take my
interesting.
first reaction as a okay, well, not her.
Yeah.
They went on to explain what is it that we're trying to do in this mentorship program, and it was really about trying to ensure that I was then equipped with what I needed to understand myself, understand my strengths, understand how to navigate, understand how to be a leader. And so while Syngenta offered a lot of great development opportunities and trainings to help you with some of that, what I ended up getting from this group, that coaching, that peer to peer mentorship, that hey, here's some sponsors over here for you. When I say I made the jump from procurement into market research, that wasn't by accident. It didn't just happen. You had people now talking about me in the right rooms, people rooting for me, people that before didn't need to know who I was, but now there have been connections that were made that I would not have been able to do on my own. So
Right on.
get connected, and then do the work. I mean, so many times, you see people come in where it's like, I'm owed this, give me this, and I should be paid this, and I need this, and I mean, and this is at every level. But then what are you delivering? What's your work ethic? What are you bringing to the table? Make
Yeah.
sure you show up at the table, you've done your homework, you add value when you open your mouth. Bring that, do that, and then all these other doors can start opening for you. You'll have people
Yeah.
wanting to help push you versus looking like, oh, well, wait a minute, have you sold anything yet? Have you? And so,
Yes.
so really, just a little bit of humility. Come in knowing your worth. You got to know your worth and what you bring to the table, but don't let your confidence turn into arrogance.
Hmm.
There's more that you can learn, and ensure that you can humbly ask the questions of people who probably know more than you, or have been in the space more than you. So when someone comes and says, Kyle, I think there's a great mentorship opportunity for you, that you don't look at them like, I'm good.
Yeah, got it. Thanks.
That you listen, right? Not that that would ever be your problem, Kyle, but yes, that would be my advice.
Hey, listen, everybody, all of us are prone to arrogance every now and then. But I like to say, kind of going with the namesake of this podcast, like the only way, like one of the main ways you can build your own brand gravity, is to not fall victim to the fallacy of expertise. Not assuming
Yeah,
that you being really, really knowledgeable about something doesn't mean that there's nothing left for you to learn in that space, and there's no room for
that's
evolution.
right.
You know.
That's right. Well said, Kyle. Well said.
Yeah. Roz, listen, this was fantastic, and I loved having you here. Your energy is absolutely infectious.
No, thank you.
Really, you've
You
been
made it
generous with
easy. Thank you.
you've been super generous with your time, and this was an awesome conversation. So, thank you for joining us on Building Brand Gravity, and
Thank you
we'll
for
catch you
having me.
guys. Of course, of course. We will catch you guys on the next episode. Thank you for joining us.